Sure. How many participants do we have on the session? Hello. How many participants do we have on the session?
Good evening, sir. There are 145 participants as of now, sir.
Okay, all right. And I'll just keep the chat window open. Let me just, can you see my screen?
Yes, sir. We can see your screen, sir.
Okay, great. Fine. So shall we go ahead now? Shall we start?
Yes, sir.
Okay, excellent. So very good evening, everyone. And like you heard, my name is Sandeep Bhattacharya. So I'm a corporate practitioner for about 28 years in the IT industry, and I've joined SIBM Pune in 2014. So 2014 onwards, I'm associated with SIBM Pune. I look after a few responsibilities such as teaching, corporate relations, placements, and I also look after our corporate training. So in today's 1 hour session, we roughly will divide it into about 20-25 minutes each. So I'll spend the first 25 minutes on competitive advantage, the next 20-25 minutes on leadership, and at the end we'll try and link both of these together so that we can join the dots and make sense. And I'll try and pause a few times for questions so I can actually take questions on the chat box when required. And of course, at the end, we'll have a Q&A session. Okay. Am I audible to everyone?
Yes, sir, you're audible, sir.
All right. Let's dive in. So competitive advantage and leadership 2020 is the title of my talk today. Let's make sure. So you can see competitive advantage and you can see a word cloud where the different sizes of the words give you the information about what we are going to talk about. And before we talk about competitive advantage, there is one very specific concept which I would like to explain, and that's the concept of economic value added. So economic value added in very simple terms is the difference between the money invested in some activity or a company and what you create out of it. So for example, if you buy milk for say 25 rupees a liter, and then you decide to create some milk products out of it and you sell it at say 100 rupees a kilogram, you've then added value of that difference. 100 minus 25, 75 rupees you've added value. And with competitive advantage, we always look at what is the economic value added, because competitive advantage is the difference between the top player and the next competitor, and that difference is known as the competitive advantage. To give you a very simple example, if you look at Maruti Suzuki, so Maruti Suzuki is the leading market player in the automotive industry. They have a market share of about 50%. The next market share is held by Hyundai, who have 18% market share. So see the difference between 50 and 18, and that difference is the competitive advantage which is translating into a much higher market share. And of course, when there's a much higher market share, the revenues and profits of the company are much higher. So this is the concept of economic value added. Let's now dive into competitive advantage. My three most favorite words in the whole management dictionary are sustainable, competitive, advantage. These are my three most favorable or favorite words in the MBA or management language. And I particularly like this word sustainable. Because there's no point in creating competitive advantage suddenly one day and the next day it disappears. The good to great companies, the great companies are all about creating sustainable competitive advantage, as is Maruti Suzuki that I talked about. And competitive advantage can be created by only two methods on earth. And one of the methods is to drive down your costs. And the second method is to increase differentiation. These are the known two methods known to all management practitioners, known to the good and great companies. And a very tiny percentage of companies actually succeed in doing both. Most companies who actually succeed in creating competitive advantage do one or the other. Rarely do we see examples of companies who actually do both. And in today's talk, I'll try and walk you through some examples of companies which all of us know. And we'll take a look at the different strategies that they follow. And at the end, we'll also look at some companies who seem to do both. And we'll see how do they actually do both. To revise, only two ways of creating competitive advantage. Either you drive your costs down or you increase differentiation. And a niche strategy, NICHE, is a subset of differentiation. And a niche is where a company focuses on a very small part of the overall market. And we look at an example of that as well. That neighborhood chai wala or neighborhood coffee shop who sells you filter coffee usually creates a sustainable advantage, competitive advantage, by virtue of the kind of taste that is available for that cup of chai or that cup of coffee. And you end up going only to that shop because that taste is far better in your opinion than many other shops around. So even at a very humble, at a very street level, we can see the different aspects of how either individuals or small businesses or even startups, they can create competitive advantage. So I'll pause for questions slightly later. Let me first finish the first parts of our talk, and then I'll pause for questions later. So moving forward, so you can see one of the venerable organizations of the world, and this is none other than Walmart. Walmart globally is the largest retail organization in the world. And when I say largest, I'm referring to their revenues. So their revenues are higher than 500 billion. That's right, 500 billion US dollars. So their revenue is actually larger than the GDPs of many countries in the world. India's GDP, by the way, is 2.8 trillion. So 500 billion is a significant percentage of that. You don't see Walmart too much in India because in India, their model is business to business. But if you ever visit the US, and maybe some of you have, you would have seen Walmart stores across US, across Europe, across various countries. And Walmart creates sustainable competitive advantage by continuously lowering their operational costs. So how do they do this? In fact, they are so good at lowering their costs, they pass on a significant part of these cost benefits to their clients, to their customers, people like you and me, who might go with a trolley cart to shop in Walmart. And the tagline for Walmart is everyday low prices. That means the promise they are making the customer is, whichever day you come into shop, you will get the lowest prices for the same item at Walmart. That is their promise. And one of the strategies that they follow to lower their operational costs is volume orders to their suppliers. In fact, they look at their whole set of suppliers and they focus on a narrow subset of suppliers who do the best work for them. Hence, each supplier ends up getting larger orders than if they had a much larger number, because if they have a larger number, the per supplier order will actually reduce. Their intent is to increase the per supplier order and thereby command much better discounts from these suppliers, much better credit terms and conditions, much shorter delivery cycles from these suppliers. And there is continuous pressure on these suppliers to perform, because every year Walmart kind of leans on their suppliers very persuasively, very hard, and says, give me better terms, give me better prices, give me better discounts. And they take this and pass them on to their customers. Another way, another strategy in which Walmart lowers its operational costs is that they have their own fleet of delivery vehicles. Normally, whenever you place an order on a supplier, that supplier's responsibility is to send you the delivery of his goods that you're going to sell. Walmart does it differently. Walmart sends their own trucks to pick up all the goods, because they do a far better job of operating this entire fleet of delivery trucks. So Walmart says, remove the delivery charges from your products. I shall pick it up myself. So this is yet another strategy that Walmart lowers their costs. And all of this, like I said, they pass on a significant amount of the benefits to the customer. So the customers tend to become very loyal customers. And in fact, they have very good customer loyalty schemes. They have discount coupons with limited validity periods. All of them are intended at getting the customer back into the Walmart store more frequently and more often than they would visit a competitor. This means that their cost of acquiring customers also drops. And if you have loyal customers, it means the second time, the third time, the fourth time a customer goes into shop, the cost of customer acquisition is zero, net zero. They don't have to spend any money in acquiring that customer, because that customer has become a loyal customer. And if you were ever to go to a Walmart store to shop, it's a wonderful shopping experience. So these are large, massive stores, very nicely signposted, and you can look at their videos and images on YouTube if you like to. Very wide aisles, plentiful shopping carts, thousands of shopping carts. You'll never fall short of a shopping cart. Here in our country, if we go to shop, sometimes we have to fight over shopping carts because there's a limited number. Aisles are narrow. So sometimes you have to move out of the way if somebody else wishes to pass. So there they have large stores, wide aisles, nicely signposted, well merchandised, lots of specials with large banners advertising those specials. Net, it's a wonderful experience to shop at Walmart. So it makes you into a loyal customer, that lowers your customer acquisition costs, which means Walmart's profitability improves dramatically. And that's the sustainable competitive advantage that they create via lower costs. So that's the Walmart case study. Let's move forward. So now you see the logo of a company which is probably very familiar to you, and a lot of you may be users of iPhones. This is Apple Corporation. And Apple Corporation is not about low prices. No. Apple products are much more expensive than many competing products. Yet they create such a sustainable competitive advantage that customers keep buying Apple. And once you have bought an Apple, usually you are hooked to their superior class of product, higher differentiation, much more secure operating system, higher differentiation, proprietary accessories. Their accessories do not work with Android phones. The charger that you use for an Apple phone will not work on an Android phone. Again, differentiation. Their phones are designed in the US, but they are manufactured in China, which means their costs of manufacture are much lower. And Apple typically costs, the cost of manufacturing an average iPhone is about roughly $100, $110. And they sell it for $799, $899, $999, $1,099. $1,000 is 75,000 rupees. And that's the average Apple iPhone price. There are models which are much, much higher. And it's a challenge for them to do this. But so far, they have succeeded very well. And iPhone is not their only product. Think back a few years, there was iPad. Think back even more years, there was iPod. Think back even more years, they had Macintosh computers, which created the first graphical user interfaces, the first GUIs, as it's called. If you look forward into the future, Apple has created a wonderful ecosystem called iTunes. Again, differentiation. No other company has this kind of an ecosystem. Apple are also doing a lot of R&D with many new products. And a couple of years back, they entered a new product segment altogether. And this segment is the segment of wearables. Yes, that's right. I am talking about iWatch. So iWatch is now the highest selling wearable device. And of course, it is integrated to the iPhone. Not too far away, that is not too distant in the future, some of their other products which will hit the market will be spectacles and glasses. Apple have already started releasing a credit card product in the market. So they are working on fintech, and rumor on the market is that Apple is also doing a lot of R&D with driverless cars. And that's again a completely different segment of the market. And in the center of all of this sits all of their R&D, their iOS operating system, their iTunes ecosystem, and so on and so forth. So at each and every stage of their corporate existence, they have succeeded in creating higher differentiation, thereby creating sustainable competitive advantage. Do you know how much cash, reserves, and surplus Apple has on their balance sheet? The number is close to 250 billion US dollars. That's right, 250 billion US dollars. If Apple wanted, they could buy up a few countries like this. It's so high, their balance sheet is so strong. And you can also read about another very interesting statistic. Apple also has the highest market capitalization of any company in the marketplace. And it's very close to 2 trillion US dollars, which is a very high market cap. If any of you own shares in Apple, my sincere congratulations. You are a very rich person, and in future you will become even richer. So that was the case study of Apple. So what did we look at? We looked at the two ways of creating competitive advantage. One, we looked at the case study of Walmart, who create advantage through lowering costs. Two, we looked at Apple Corporation, which creates sustainable competitive advantage through higher differentiation. Now let's look at the third category. Remember, we said niche, a small segment of the market. So here is a favorite product, and many of you are looking at the product very curiously. Maybe some of you will buy it in future, some years from now. So this product is a Lamborghini car, and a Lamborghini is a made in Italy niche car with a very high powered engine, and this car is capable of very high speeds and very fast acceleration. And when it accelerates, it makes that distinctive vroom sound when you accelerate. And typically it will go from like 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in 7 or 8 seconds. It's a very powerful car. These are called as sports cars. Although this is not used for racing, the race cars are different. So you can go and purchase this from a Lamborghini showroom. So the entry-level Lamborghini in India costs about 3 crores, and then the pricing goes successively higher. So notice that a company like Lamborghini does not sell you a Maruti 800 or a Swift Desire sedan. They are not in that segment at all. They take aim only at a small segment of the market. These are the very high net worth individuals who can afford to spend 3 crores, 5 crores, 10 crores on one vehicle. And they also sell a very limited number of units of these vehicles. So last year, if we looked at the automotive industry in India, the total number of cars that got manufactured in India are roughly 4 million. Lamborghini's whole year's sales will not even be 5,000 units. It will be lower than 5,000 units. But like I said, each unit is priced at a very high price point because they focus on a niche segment of the market. And by doing that, they actually sell very expensive cars and they create sustainable competitive advantage. So again, Lamborghini is a brand that has been in existence for a long period of time. So we looked at three different ways of creating competitive advantage: lowered costs, increased differentiation, and a niche strategy. Remember, I said that a very tiny percentage of companies actually succeed in doing both. So let's look at a few case studies of such companies. Can any organization successfully execute both strategies together? And the answer is yes, very few of them. So here is where I shall pause, because here is a case study in a picture. And what I would like you to do is to look very carefully at this picture and tell me what you observe in the picture, and does that translate to lower costs or higher differentiation? This is a company that manages to do both. So I would like responses from you on the chat box from each of you based on what you observe in this picture. And after listening to your responses, I'll do a debrief to tell you all about it. But take 10, 20 or 30 seconds, look at the picture carefully, tell me what you observe and what is the impact of that on either cost or differentiation. So over to you. I am waiting for your responses on the chat box. They may get discounts by scanning QR, Anil Kumar, possible, that's right. Product differentiation, customer satisfaction, how? Srinivasa Reddy is saying product differentiation. Question is how? So don't give me textbook answers. Observe what you see in the picture and relate that into what we are discussing here. So what do you observe and what is the impact of that on either differentiation or cost? Quality. So how do you see quality here? Alekha Devi is saying it's a metro train. So it's not a metro train, it's a metro station, but you are close to the picture. Always customer observes cost and date. Tirumala is saying it. No carriers, no wastage because no shelf life needed, no need of ground staff. That's correct, Charan. Variety of products to choose at the public place. That's correct, John. Comparing to other products, consumer knowledge, directly ordering through scan, Satyanarayana, that's correct. So it shortens the product ordering cycle by the customer. That's correct. By forcing them to buy goods in larger quantity and lower rates, you are repeating back my Walmart case study. In this picture, there is no evidence of buying goods in larger quantities. Vikas is saying it's a metro station where they have set up a mart. That's correct. They don't need special customer. The person who comes to travel, they can attract them. Absolutely. They are trying to attract the passenger of the train. This is a metro station. That's very correct. Dr. Vinod Kumar is saying instant information about the product. That's correct, because they are scanning barcodes or QR codes. This is not a train. The train is actually inside. If you see the second passenger here, he's actually looking through the door at the train which is inside. So this is the wall of a metro station where these passengers are standing. We need not go to the customer, they come near the products. That's right. So here the customer comes to the market automatically, and they have made the market in such a way that they have a captive base for all of the customers. Okay, good. Some of you have given correct and appropriate observations. So let me share the debrief. What you're seeing on the walls, these are actually not products at all. These are merely the images of the products. So all of these are displays. These are flex material with displays, and the actual products are not even here. So inventory is zero. Second, it's at a metro station. So that means they actually don't have to pay rent to a separate owner for that space. You know, if you have to set up a department store or you have to set up a retail store, you have to pay rent, you have to pay electricity, you have to pay utilities. It's a huge sum of money. Here, there is very minuscule rent because you've only rented the side of the wall of the metro station. So immediately you've lowered your cost of rent. Second, there are no employees at all in this department store. It's a completely people-less department store. The only employees are there in the warehouses. So that means first, rent. Second, cost of labor. Your cost of labor has come down dramatically because there are no people in this department store. If you go to a big bazaar, you go to a D-Mart, it's crawling with employees. Lots of employees are there. So you've straight away lowered the employee costs. Third, there is zero inventory because all of these are images of the products which the customer is scanning. There are no physical products at all in inventory. So this is the third way in which they have lowered their costs. So the customer is at the metro station. He or she scans the QR codes, presses purchase on the mobile phone, pays for it with his credit card. And by the time the customer reaches the end of his journey, the goods actually get delivered to the customer's office or home address, depending upon what he or she specified in the smartphone. So the cycle time is reduced significantly. And there is 100% accuracy because this is based on a scanning cycle. So these are all elements of differentiation. The displays can change the products, and that way they keep the inventory updated, but there is no physical inventory at all. So there are the best way of creating differentiation is if you have a very fast delivery to the customer and you have a very short process cycle. Short process cycle means you get more and more customers that you can handle every day. So they are lowering cost, they are also creating differentiation. So this is the case study in a picture. Normally when I teach this in a class, I take a lot more time over it. But since your time is limited, I am kind of bringing the discussion into a summary. So I would encourage you to look up this particular case study. I would like you to Google later when you have the time. The name of this store is HomePlus, HOMEPLUS. So if you Google HomePlus, South Korea, you will actually see similar images. You can also look at some of their videos on YouTube where you will understand the entire business model that HomePlus operate. And of course, they operate in a country which has the highest internet connectivity, and Koreans are extremely tech savvy, and Koreans also hate to go to the grocery store. So they have brought the store to the place where the customers are there, captive at a metro station, because they have to take the metro to go to office, come back from office. Public transport has captive customers. So this is the HomePlus stores in South Korea. They are number 2 in the entire retail sector in South Korea, and they are very close to becoming number 1. I think the total number of stores they have now is about 24 or 25, and they first launched this in the year 2013. So it has become extremely successful, highly automated stores, no rent, no electricity, no employees, and sharp USPs to the customer, offering them great examples of shopping. So this was the example of HomePlus. Remember, I said few companies succeed in doing both cost differentiation. Let's look at another example, which I'm sure all of you know this case study. So there you see Indigo, and Indigo is a great example of one of the finest airlines in the world, not just in India. So what does Indigo do to lower their costs and improve differentiation? Let's look at the cost angle first. Indigo places volume orders for aircraft, and you're seeing the picture of an Airbus 320. The typical sticker price of an Airbus 320 is roughly $100 million. The first order that Indigo placed was in 2005, and the first order that they placed was for 100 aircraft. That's right, 100 planes. Now, when you place that size of an order, the manufacturer will of course give you a huge discount. So immediately you've lowered your operating cost because your capex, capital expenditure, is a lot lower. The second order was 180 aircraft in 2011. And in 2017, they placed the mother of all orders. This order was 250 aircraft. And this was the largest order for aircraft in the history of aviation in the world. Imagine, from an Indian airline, Indigo, largest order in the world in the history of aviation. That order was worth $25 billion. So immediately the cost became lower because they got all these fantastic discounts. Now, that's not all. They only fly aircraft from the Airbus A320 family, single aircraft type. That means the same pilots can fly all the aircraft. That means you need a lower number of pilots and cabin crew because it's the same aircraft. It's the same training, the same spare parts, the same maintenance. Compared to some other airline, for example, Air India, who has 5 or 6 or 7 different kinds of aircraft, this is one kind of aircraft. Another method of lowering costs. Third, the orders that Indigo places don't add planes to the fleet. The first thing that they do, so when they placed the second order, 180, what do you think they did? They added 180 to the first order of 100 and became 280? No. They took the 180 and first sent back all the previous 100 planes and only added 80, and they had 180 new planes. Now the benefit of flying a new plane, of course the customers like us feel good, but much lower cost of operations. The major 3 elements for an airline, cost elements: fuel, maintenance and labor. The moment you have new aircraft, your fuel costs become lower, your maintenance costs become lower. Labor, we already talked about that you need less labor because it's a single aircraft type. Again, notice how smartly they have managed to lower their operational costs. The third element of lowering costs I'll talk about. You notice on the picture 2 parts which go up like this on the sides of the plane. These are called as sharklets. And today all airlines have sharklets on the edge of the plane. Sharklets lower the fuel burn by about 4%. And Indigo were the first company to pioneer this innovation in the market. Of course, now everybody has this, all airlines have it, everybody takes advantage of it. So these are the 3-4 ways by which Indigo have dramatically lowered their operating costs. Now let's look at differentiation. So there's a very famous analytic. It's called OTP. No. This is not the OTP which comes on your phone. This OTP is called on-time performance. So Indigo has the best on-time performance in the country. So when you and I want to book a ticket, we first look for the Indigo flight because we know in our minds that Indigo is most likely to be on time. One very nice way to differentiate their product and their service. Second, it's another analytic called TAT, turnaround time. So let's say you're seated at the airport and you're waiting for the incoming flight to come in and the flight lands. Then there are 5-6 very important things which the airline has to do. First, they have to get rid of the 180 people who are sitting in the plane. First. Second, they have to clean the plane because you know what you and I do to the plane, right? So they have to clean the plane. Third, they have to unload the luggage of the passengers who are getting off. So fourth, they have to refuel the plane they have to make the tank full. Fifth, they have to put some food. And sixth, the most difficult task, now they have to load another 180 passengers. And Indigo does a good job in onboarding passengers by rows, and they check the boarding cards. They are possibly the most strict of all the airlines because they want to finish all of these 6 tasks in the shortest period of time. This is called as turnaround time. And I keep measuring the turnaround time. The average turnaround time of Indigo is about 25 to 30 minutes, and they are the fastest in the Indian market. And within 25 to 30 minutes, the plane takes off again and flies off. This means that Indigo spends more time flying in the air, and a plane only makes money when they are flying in the air. Look at the huge differentiation. Their average utilization rate is about 16 to 17 hours per plane, and that is one of the highest in the world. Of course, Indigo also has a very good communication system, so you get SMSs. If the flight is delayed or the gate has changed, you'll get an SMS. When the flight finishes, you'll get an SMS asking you for your feedback. Indigo were the first airline to offer seats whose cushions are now thinner. You must have noticed that now the seat cushions are thinner. Seat cushions are thinner means the weight of every seat is reduced. In a typical 320, there are 180 seats. So that reduced weight into 180 seats is again giving them a further advantage in weight. And all of these are there on their new aircraft, which are called Neo. You would have read about it in the press that this 250 order that they placed were all for new aircraft, which has new generation of engines, which anyway lowers their operating cost. And of course, Indigo usually treat you very well as a passenger. Usually they are on time. In fact, so much is their sustainable competitive advantage that today, if you and I go to book an Indigo ticket, chances are the Indigo ticket is not the cheapest. Chances are the Indigo ticket is actually the most expensive. Maybe there's a 8 to 10% difference, but chances are the Indigo ticket costs more. Others like SpiceJet, Air India, Go Air, they may be costing less. So Indigo is able to monetize their competitive advantage and take that higher spend on tickets multiplied by the millions of passengers that they fly. That is the sustainable competitive advantage. And to give you an insight, they have some very smart people running the airline. Their CEO's name is Rananjoy Datta. He is a 30-year veteran of the aviation industry. Their founders' names are Rahul Bhatia and Rakesh Gangwal. Both of them have spent 30, 40 years in the aviation airline industry. So this is called as domain expertise. Another name for it is subject matter expertise. So the top bosses of the airline are all people who have deep expertise in the industry. And when you have such experienced people running the airline, chances are you'll do a good job. In fact, their current COO, his name is Wolfgang Prock-Schauer. He was the person who was the former CEO of Jet Airways in the good years of Jet Airways. He was the person who really built Jet Airways as an airline. He is now COO in Indigo Airlines. So aviation, by the way, happens to be one of the domains in which I am a specialist. I have worked with aviation customers for 25, 30 years. And hence, if I start talking about aviation, I tend to never stop. So I must stop here because we have a limited period of time. So I will close with the summary of this case study, Indigo, who do both differentiation and lower cost, and hence have created a sustainable competitive advantage. Indigo is the only airline in India who is profitable. I'm not counting the COVID times because these are unusual times. But overall, if you look at their 13, 14 years of existence, Indigo have been profitable. They have IPO'd. They are financially very successful. Airline industry, by the way, rarely makes profits. 4 to 7% is like a record year for the airline. All the other airlines in India are making losses. Indigo is the only one making profits thanks to their sustainable competitive advantage. Okay, so I've talked for a long time on competitive advantage, and like I earlier told you, this is my favorite subject in management in MBA. Let us now move on and talk about Leadership. So can you see this big banner of leadership on the slide?
Yes, sir.
Great. Okay, great. So let's start with the definition of leadership. And I am a huge fan of very simple definitions. So leadership is the act of influencing employees to voluntarily pursue organization goals. And in this definition, the most crucial word is the word voluntarily, because voluntarily means that the leader will get the buy-in of the team. That means the team members now own the objective. And if your team members own the objective, chances are you will accomplish your objectives. And I've shown you the picture of a lens below. So the lens is the different perspectives on leadership. So it is the same light entering the lens, but the leader sees the situation in a different light. That's why I've shown you a picture of the lens. It's also the action of leading a group of people or an organization. So what do you think is the first quality of a leader? And I am now looking for your answers on the chat box. What do you think is the first quality a leader should have? You can type your answers in the chat box. Understanding, leader group, okay, commitment, okay, time management skills. These are all required, but this is not the answer I'm looking for. Out of box thinking, communication, believing, leading the group. Sonia is saying, Kalpana is saying, having good understanding, communication, okay, supporting. Vandana is saying initiative. Pavan is saying discipline. Discipline is a good word, but it is not the first quality. Growing up together. Sai is saying teamwork. Rajesh is saying listen to others' ideas. All of your answers are correct, but they are not the first quality. There are other qualities that you require. So all your answers are correct. Leader can think about people, understanding, confidence, support, satisfying other group members, responsibility, okay, self-confidence, leading and guiding, trust, okay, good. Passion and courage, okay. You can stop typing and I will give you the answer to this question. The first quality of a leader is humility. A leader needs to be humble first, and then all the other qualities really come in. And if you think back, we have a wonderful example in India of humility. The late Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, one of the most humble people who lived on earth. And when he finished his president's term at Rashtrapati Bhavan, he walked out of Rashtrapati Bhavan with 2 suitcases only. And he was an extremely humble person, extremely humble. Another very, very humble person is Barack Obama, the former president of the US. And you can look at YouTube videos. This is one of the first qualities, and the best leaders usually are very, very down to earth and humble. So this is the first quality of a leader. Let's look at another quality. So again, this is a question for you. The essence of leadership is what? And the answer is in the picture, but I would like you to type your answer in the chat box. You see a picture of a small child who has been tossed up by his father in the air, and the child is smiling because there is one word. Vandana, you are absolutely correct. The answer is trust. That's right. Many of you are writing trust. It is absolutely correct. The child is smiling because he trusts that his father will catch him. And the essence of leadership is this 5-letter word, trust. Friends, this 5-letter word is the basis of all relationships, personal or professional in life. And if you can develop trust in your team, believe you me, you are well on your way to being a leader. So that was great performance by all of you. Many of you wrote the answer of trust, and I encourage you to think of how you can create trust. Trust, by the way, has to be earned. You cannot force trust on someone. You can't wake up at 6 o'clock one morning and look at your team and say, from 6:30, all of you have to trust me. That never happens. You have to earn the trust of the people around you, whether they are subordinates, whether they are peers. You also have to earn the trust of your leaders. Because if the leader trusts you and you're a team player, then that bond establishes very, very solidly. So the essence of leadership is trust. Let's look at what's next. So here are 4 leadership theories. The first theory is trait. Trait means something that you are born with. It's a characteristic, it's an attribute. And the question we are asking is, who will make a good leader? The second theory in leadership is behavior. And it asks the question, what do good leaders do? The third theory is called leader-member exchange and transformational leader. And the question being asked is, how does the interaction between the subordinate and the supervisor affect the supervisor and the leadership situation? The fourth and my favorite, most favorite theory of leadership is the contingency and the path goal approach. So under a given condition, under a given circumstance, situation, who will be a good leader and what behavior is likely to be most successful? So this is called as the contingency and the path goal approach. And to illustrate this favorite theory of mine, I will now show you one more case study. So this is a familiar picture on Indian roads, right? It's a massive traffic jam. This happens in all the cities of India, that at some point there's a massive traffic jam, signals have failed, and there is complete gridlock. Not a single car can move. And at such a time, somebody gets out of his car or gets off his bike, comes to the center of the situation, takes charge, and starts controlling the traffic. Chances are all of you have been in this situation. And the moment he starts controlling the traffic, all the drivers of all the other cars who were all madly honking, they were trying to go here and there, they start listening to his orders. And he tells somebody, you stop. He tells somebody else, you go. And in about 10-15 minutes, he manages to sort out this problem, this traffic jam. And after that, he just gets into his car and disappears. Now, this man has never come to a leadership class. This man has never done an MBA program, but this man has looked at the situation and has used his inborn leadership qualities to solve the challenge in this situation. And hence, I call the situational leadership theory, which is my most favorite theory. And I really respect leaders who handle a situation, who may not have the job title of a leader or a VP. That person who's solving this traffic jam does not have a formal job title, but he manages to solve the situation in that circumstance. That is called as the situation leadership theory. And it also tells us that leadership qualities are there in every individual. And yes, of course, you need patience, but more than patience, you also need the qualities of being able to direct people to do the right thing. Because unless you do the right thing here, the traffic jam will not get solved. And chances are you have seen this situation before. The next time you see the situation, remember my words, situational leadership, and quietly applaud the person who solves this massive problem. Okay. So what are your leadership strengths? And again, I would like you to type some of your answers on the chat box that you think you have. What are your leadership strengths? Unity. Good, John. That's a good strength to have. Emotional quotient, very important. So Prema Kumar, very good answer. Sonia, communication, excellent. Srinivasa Reddy, inspiration, correct. Knowledge, being responsible, responsibility. Dr. Jagdish is saying taking the responsibility, very correct. Confidence, knowledge, balanced EQ, IQ, very true, very, very true. Positive thoughts, coordination, extremely good. Hardworking, good. So all of you have honesty, integrity. I really like that, Akshita. Excellent answer. Spurti is saying self-confidence. That's correct. Hari Chandra Prasad is saying commitment. Swati is saying self-confidence. Sai is saying analyze the situation, commitment. Brutal honesty. I like that choice of words, teamwork and time. Vandana says trust. Absolutely correct. So you can pause now. You are all absolutely correct. These are all good leadership strengths, but the best leaders need to have all of these strengths together. So let me see if I have a slide listing it. Yes, I do. So here on the left, you see the traits: adaptable to situations, alert to social environment, ambitious, assertive, cooperative, decisive, dependable, dominant, energetic, persistent, self-confident, tolerant of stress, willing to assume responsibility. Notice many of the answers you all gave are all there in the traits, which are attributes, characteristics. On the right side, skills: clever, conceptually skilled, creative, diplomatic and tactful, tremendous communicator, knowledgeable, organized, persuasive, socially skilled. Last but not the least, integrity, honesty, compassion, humility. These are some great qualities to have. And by no means is this an exhaustive list. If I started writing an exhaustive list, I would have possibly 50 to 60 bullet points. But there's not enough time for that. So I've given you a shorter list of leadership traits and skills. Okay. Now I come to one of my favorite topics. Subhash, you're right. Accountability is also needed. And when I teach leadership in class, I actually tell a story about accountability. And that story is from a film called Sully. But we don't have so much time, so I won't tell that story. But I want to touch upon one of my favorite topics in leadership, which is women leadership. And just before I talk about it, I must share with you that yes, we are doing better in our corporate world as well as in our institutes about having better gender diversity ratios, but it's a journey. A lot more needs to be done. So I'll show you a couple of pictures and let me see whether you can give me the answer. So what do you see in this picture? What is this picture capturing? You can type your answers in the chat box. Of course, it shows ladies, it shows women, victory together. Okay, no, I want very specific answers. All are equal, victory. Yes, it's victory, but it's victory of what? Why was this picture taken? What was happening when this picture was taken? So I would like you to think about that. Teamwork, successful, all of that is correct. Success meet, okay, okay. All women flight team, that's correct. Ram Krishna is getting close. That's right, it's all woman flight team. So friends, let me give you the answer in the interest of time. This picture was taken on the 8th of March 2017 on International Women's Day. And this picture is the picture of the Air India flight crew who operated the longest flight in the world, Delhi-San Francisco, 17 hours non-stop. And when you operate a 17-hour flight, you actually have to carry two sets of crew. One crew flies the plane, the other crew sleeps. And after 8 hours, the sleeping crew takes over and the flying crew goes to sleep. And even the air traffic controllers on the ground, all of them were ladies. So this is the crew who crewed that Air India flight, Delhi-San Francisco, 17 hours, one way, non-stop and back. And this photograph was taken on International Women's Day, 8th March 2017. That's the answer to this picture. Let me show you another picture. So again, I'm very, very proud of this picture. This is three very efficient and effective and powerful ladies who have become combat pilots in the Indian Air Force. Combat pilots is, in the unlikely event of a war, they will actually fly fighter aircraft to attack the enemy. That is the highest level of pilots in the Air Force. Incredible ladies, Mohana Singh, Bhavna Kant and Avni Chaturvedi. And when you fly combat, the training is exactly the same. So a male pilot receives exactly the same training as a female pilot. In fact, one of the recruitment tests in Air Force is they actually measure how well you can respond to the gravitational force, and you have to be able to withstand forces up to 7G. It means 7 times the force of gravity. And all of their trainings are exactly the same. So these are the first 3 pilots who've qualified, and they are tremendous examples of women's leadership. And in this context, I just want to share with you one example. And it's an example of a country which I dearly love. I used to work for an Israeli company in one of my jobs. Israel has 2 years compulsory military service for all students, male and female. And when they come out of those 2 years, each of those students has turned into a fighting leader. And that is one of the reasons why the Israelis are some of the most innovative people. And Israel as a country is one of the most innovative countries on earth. And the government of India does a lot of work with Israel. So I just wanted to share that example. And they treat male and females absolutely equally. So these are two great examples of women leadership that I wanted to share with all of you. I hope you liked it. Supreme Court recently has changed the rules. That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. But those rules need to be implemented. And really the test is in whether they get implemented or not. Okay. So here, normally in a class, I do this as a debate. Are leaders born or are they made? And you can type your answers again in the chat box. So when I'm teaching this in class, I put a line through the center of the class and I call it line of control, LOC. And I say this side is India and this side is not India. And I make them debate. So some of you are saying made, most of you are saying made. Okay, okay. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, okay. Hari has said born, rest are saying made, somebody saying self-made, can be both. Some by birth, some by hard work. That's correct. Leaders are their own transformation. Okay, okay. So you can pause again. When I do this in class, we have a very fiery debate for about 10-15 minutes. And it creates some very good discussions in the class. And fact of matter is that each of us are actually born with leadership qualities. And the upbringing we get in the first formative years of our lives. So typically this is the ages of 3 to 12. And it's a function of the parental upbringing at home and the primary school education in school. The combination of these two factors influences the made, and the born is inborn within us. So it's a combination of the qualities that you have and the programming, the upbringing, the transformation, the education that you get. It's a combination of all of these which creates future leaders. If you think back to your school days, many of you were class monitors, school captains. In college, you held persons of responsibility. And as you go forward in life, you will hold further positions of responsibility. So this is the external environment influencing the leadership qualities of a person. So the real answer actually lies in the middle. It's neither born nor made. It probably lies in the middle. It's a function of both of these. So you can train leaders, but you cannot train everybody to become a leader. In fact, when you go to industry, you will see a lot of managers around you, but very few of those managers are real leaders. Although ideally every manager should be a leader. Because if it was only born, every manager would be a leader, because everyone has those leadership qualities, but they don't behave as leaders because it's a function of the environment and the programming that has gone into the human mind. Like I said, this is a deep topic, a long discussion, but we don't have so much time. So I'm going a little fast. So some leadership behaviors, and I've highlighted the important ones. Leaders build consensus, communicate clear directions. Leaders recruit, develop, mentor, and engage teams. Leaders respect all individuals. Leaders encourage intelligent risk-taking. Some more behaviors: thoughtful experiments, first-hand knowledge. Leaders ask why to learn about the causes of problems, and that's how they go about solving problems. They understand the health and safety of employees. They understand the highest level of integrity and ethics. They also understand market and industry trends. So what do you see in this picture? Of course, it's a pack of wolves, but what do you see in this picture? And these are wild animals. These are wolves. So again, we are running a little short of time. So having asked the question, I shall give you the answers right away. So the first three wolves that you see in the picture, highlighted in red, these are the three old and sick wolves of the pack. And they are walking right in front so that the rest of the pack does not leave them behind. the next 5 are the fastest wolves in the pack, and they are walking at that spot to prevent any attack coming from the front. After that, there is rest of the pack, and there is a group of 5 wolves who are at the back of the pack to make sure that if there is any attack from the back, they will ward off all the attack. And the leader is right at the end, and he has the entire pack in his sights, and he can take any action required to protect the pack from anything that happens. The leader is right at the end, marked with that fat blue arrow, and he will make sure that the whole pack is well taken care of and they are going through with their journey. Now, these wolves did not attend this lecture on leadership. They did not go to a MBA class on leadership, but they instinctively know how to behave as a team. The leader knows how to behave as a leader. So this was a lesson from the animal kingdom. So let's now link the dots together. So I have talked for a long time on competitive advantage. I've also talked to you about leadership in a variety of contexts. Let's link both together and see how do we create sustainable competitive advantage through strategic leadership. So here is a picture of a gardener, and the picture of a gardener is a metaphor, and the metaphor is for 2 great tools in the management lexicon or the management dictionary. These tools are called coaching and mentoring. And just like a gardener plants a seed, puts some earth, puts some fertilizer, waters the plants, churns the earth and takes care of a plant until it becomes a big tree, exactly in the same way, senior leaders need to coach and mentor young talent. All of you are young talent and you will shortly go into the industry. So you need good coaches and mentors to look after you. And the case study here is from a company headquartered in Bangalore, and this company is Mindtree. In the year 2009, the story is of a gentleman called Subroto Bagchi, who was their COO. In 2009, Mindtree did an IPO. Subroto Bagchi resigned as COO and he appointed himself as gardener. And in his role as gardener, he wanted to create new leaders. So he had done a survey of the company and he had found, like any good IT company, all of them were very good at execution. And these are called ninjas. The first picture with the sword. Ninjas are great executors. But there were 3 leadership roles which they were missing. So the one leadership role was innovator. The second of a thought leader. So the picture with the light bulb is the innovator. The picture of a person pulling up the other is the thought leader. And the last picture is with the umbrella. That's the rainmaker. Rainmakers are people who make something new happen. So Subroto Bagchi analyzed that they needed all these 3 roles, and he created a voluntary mentorship program which consisted of 4 conversations of 4 hours each with people. And these were completely voluntary. People could choose to enter the mentorship program or choose not to. And he managed to create a leadership bench of 111 leaders across these 4 job roles. And Mindtree went on to become a wonderful company. And they became so successful that few months back, late last year, Mindtree was acquired by Larsen & Toubro Information Services. So today it is part of Larsen & Toubro, and the founders have all retired from their active positions. But remember this picture of a gardener, and remember that you need a coach and a mentor to handhold you, to guide you, to mentor you and give you direction in work and in life. If you have a mentor, you are lucky, you are in a good position. When my MBA students return back from their summer internships, the first question I ask them is, how was the boss? And if the boss was good, 50% of your job is done. So this is the story of the gardener. Next story, and this is a very famous picture. And this picture is from the 1983 World Cup, the first time India managed to win the World Cup in 1983. And this is an iconic picture. And the person in the picture is Kapil Dev. Yes, that's correct, Venkat. So Kapil Dev receiving the World Cup from the chairman of the ICC. And this was the first time the Indian cricket team developed the belief that we could win. And if you looked at the team, they had two great players, Kapil Dev and Sunil Gavaskar, and they had 9 so-called ordinary players. I call them as ordinary because they were not stars. But Kapil Dev managed to create sustainable competitive advantage of winning the World Cup by inspiring extraordinary performance from ordinary players. In fact, before 1983, India had only won one World Cup match across 2 tournaments, and that match was actually against a team called East Africa. And there is no country like East Africa if you look at the atlas. So that East Africa team was basically a bunch of Gujaratis who had migrated to Africa and they had learned to play cricket. So India had beaten them before. That was the only success we had. And even in the 83 World Cup, we almost lost to Zimbabwe. In fact, we were 17 for 6 when Kapil Dev walked into bat. At the other end was Ravi Shastri. And Kapil Dev played the innings of his life, 175 not out. And at the end of that, India had scored 268. Unfortunately, there is no video footage of that match because BBC was on strike on that day. That was the turning point of India and the Indian cricket team. After that, we believed that we could win. And this was the first sustainable competitive advantage in cricket that Kapil Dev brought to the Indian team. So this is the story of the 1983 World Cup. Extraordinary performance from ordinary individuals. So I call this the picture of the 2 Dadas. One Dada is Sourav Ganguly and the other Dada is myself. And this picture is from the 23rd of September 2018 when Sourav Ganguly came to SIBM Pune and we had organized a book launch for Sourav Ganguly. So Sourav Ganguly has written a brilliant book. Please note down the title of this book. The title of the book is A Century is Not Enough. And it's a book which is more a management book than a cricket book. And that day I had the opportunity to spend time with Sourav Ganguly and I asked him lots of questions. Of course, I happened to be the master of ceremonies where we were having a book launch. So I spent a lot of time with him and I realized that he was operating on the level of strategy. So he was creating sustainable competitive advantage for the Indian cricket team and converting it through his leadership capabilities as captain into wonderful performances because we started beating foreign teams in their countries. And for the first time, he brought backbone, a spine of steel into the Indian cricket team. And let me talk about a couple of the strategies that he used, leadership strategies that he used to create sustainable competitive advantage. First strategy that he used was recruitment. And so I asked him, Dada, how would you recruit young players because you're forever touring? And he said that I developed trust in a couple of selectors and I empowered them to give me young talent. When they identified young talent, they told me of young players and we would then take them into the Indian cricket team, even if they did not have experience. So somebody is asking for the book name. The book name is A Century is Not Enough. A Century is Not Enough is the name of the book. You'll get it on Amazon. So coming back to the first leadership strategy, identifying the right talent. And in the leadership behaviors a little earlier, I showed you recruit, hire, coach, mentor. So recruitment of the right talent is one of the most critical leadership strategies, because if you have the right team, you can then create that sustainable competitive advantage. Whether you're Walmart or you're Indigo, you need good people in your organization. Second strategy that Sourav Ganguly used was to create a culture of winning. So now he's identified all of these young players, he's brought them into the Indian cricket team, and he has told them very, very clearly, even if you fail, you will not be dropped from the Indian cricket team. So that creates a culture of winning. And by telling them that they will not be dropped from the Indian cricket team, he has removed from the mind that one four-letter word which is called as fear. F-E-A-R, false evidence appearing real. If there are 100 things that you are afraid of, you will notice 90 of those things never happen. So he removed fear from the minds of the players, and the players created a world-beating Indian cricket team. And he brought in young talent and players, Zaheer Khan, Mahendra Singh Dhoni, Yuvraj Singh, Mohammad Kaif, Harbhajan Singh, Virendra Sehwag. He created this core of individuals who believed in their minds that they could win, and they delivered some match-winning performances. And I'll end this particular case study with a story. The story is of the NatWest Trophy, which India won. England scored 326, and two young players, Yuvraj Singh and Mohammad Kaif, played the innings of their life, and India ended the match with 327 for 8, and we won the NatWest Cup. But that is not the end of the story. The end of the story is the post-match interview. Post-match interview, they first call the losing captain, and the losing captain was Nasser Hussain, who's quite an egoistic leader. So they called him, and he came for the interview, and the question to him was, so Nasser, why do you think the English team lost the match? And Nasser gave an epic reply. He said, the Indians played out of their skins. Now that means the team has a performance envelope, and the Indian team has played far out of their performance envelope. That means when he says the Indians have played out of their skins, again is extraordinary performance by that team. And that team did not have ordinary players, it had good players whose names we just discussed. So when good players play excellently, they create great performances. And Saurav Ganguly brought in the culture of winning overseas. Before this, we had mostly won in India. He brought in the culture of winning, and he was a very astute strategist. In the time that I spent together with him, I realized he's more of a management guru, applying his management strategy thinking, competitive advantage and leadership to create winning performances is what Saurav Ganguly brought. And his words were, leadership is an amazing disease. It either cures you or it kills you. So that, my friends, was the story of Saurav Ganguly. I'll wind up quickly now. Is it okay to play a video, Narendra?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. We are slightly running over time, but I'll wind up now in the next 5 minutes. So I'll just show a short video and then we'll kind of wind it up. Okay. So just give me a moment to pull it up. Okay, can you see a blank screen?
Yes, sir. We are able to see.
Okay, great. So I'll play the video. It's about a 2-minute clip. I would like you to watch it carefully. And when you're watching it, you look at it and think of how they are creating sustainable competitive advantage and how they are practicing leadership. Think about these two topics and you'll see something very interesting in the video. Okay. So I hope you found that inspiring video. What did you observe?
What did you observe when you watched this video? Team spirit, absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. What else did you see? Together we work, we win every race. Okay, teamwork. More specifically, teamwork is correct. Coordination, very good, very good. Because when you are rowing, if all the oars don't row at the same time, without the teamwork and the coordination, the boat will turn in various directions. To keep it straight, you need that coordination, unity, teamwork. Absolutely correct. Organized team effort. That's correct. What else did you see? Mutual support, 100%. Correct. Focus, guidance, very true. Did you notice when the boats were rowing, there were certain people who were not rowing. They were standing in the middle of the boat. What were they doing? What were they doing? What did you observe about them? They were not rowing the boat. They were just standing. They were encouraging. That's correct. And there were some people at the back who had the rudders in their hands. They had certain oars. They were doing the steering. So they were doing the guiding, and they were making sure that the boat is going in a straight direction and it is completely balanced, because if the direction changes, then there is a problem. So these are the Nehru Cup races. They are great examples of sustainable competitive advantage through proper leadership, because only if and only if you are able to do better than the other team, then you win. So they of course do a lot of practice, and I thought it's a great video to really understand this whole subject of sustainable competitive advantage and strategic leadership. So I hope you liked the video. Let me just switch back to the slide deck. I think I have just one more slide to show you. So question to you: did Jobs do a good job? Remember, we talked about the Apple case study, and Jobs was an iconic leader who provided strategic leadership to his company. Do you think Jobs did a good job? So great job. Okay. That's right. He did a good job because he was a visionary leader. He was a huge innovator. And unless you innovate, you cannot create sustainable competitive advantage. And he has created such a competitive advantage that even today, when new Apple phones are released in the month of September every year, people queue up in front of the department stores and the showrooms from the previous night because they want to be the first to buy that iconic Apple product. So Apple has succeeded. Jobs, of course, did a brilliant job before he passed away about 4 or 5 years ago. And his understudy, Tim Cook, is doing a reasonably good job of leading the company. But there will never be another Steve Jobs. And if you're interested, please watch the movie on Jobs. You will really understand his life, what kind of a leader he was, and how he managed to rescue Apple, who almost went bankrupt in 97, 98, and managed to create an iconic company, which today is a global leader, and they will never look back. So that was Steve Jobs and Apple Corporation. This is my last slide. So it says, It's got a message for all of you. It says, dream, dare, soar, remove fear. Remember I said, don't have fear. False evidence appearing real. And may the force be with you, just like Star Wars. So thank you very much for your patient listening. And if you have questions, you can type them on the chat box. Narendra, can we have a few minutes for questions, although we are over time?
That's not an issue, sir.
Okay, okay. So if
Everyone is well equipped with stable, sir. Everyone, they love the session, and now the session is open for questions, sir.
Sure. So I'll take questions. I'll be happy to answer them. So I'll take a few questions. If any of you want to type in the chat box. Please tell your views on all my videos are from YouTube, so you can search there. Views on co-opetition. So co-opetition is something which is a combination of competition and cooperation. It's required sometimes. For example, telecom industry, if they work together, then they can actually influence some of the government policies in a good way. And of course, they fight amongst each other. So there's competition. So that's an example of co-opetition. Yes, I can share my presentation, not a problem. I'll email it to Narendra and he can share it with rest of you. All my videos are from YouTube. So if you just look on YouTube, you'll find them. Is health and fitness a good market to enter? It's a wonderful market to enter. Thanks to COVID times, health and fitness market will grow very steeply with proper and right guidance and products. So it's a great market. Competitive priorities of a company. So I'll explain with an example. You asked for an example. Take the example of a company called Parle Products. So they have Parle G, which has created sustainable competitive advantage for 50 years. But now they are trying to get into the premium sector. So they have launched a premium product called Platina, which is there in the market. It is not brilliantly successful. So their priorities obviously are on Parle G. And if you read some of the press, even all of those millions of migrant laborers who were walking on the roads going back to their villages, they were all carrying packets of Parle G and they were carrying water. It is so important. So Parle G is a cash cow and it's a brilliant product. It has managed to retain their quality and taste. They have created sustainable competitive advantage with a 5 rupee product. So price is not the point here. The point is how great a product they have created. So this is how they have to balance their priorities by focusing on the products which really create that sustainable competitive advantage for themselves. Last 1 or 2 questions, if you want to type in the chat box. Thank you. Your comments, I'm delighted all of you liked it, and I can read all your comments in the chat box. The pleasure is completely mine. Thank you for listening carefully and attentively. Any last questions? I'll be happy to answer. Which company can we look at case studies? Oh, there's a whole bunch of companies you can look at. You can just Google competitive advantage, case studies, and you'll see lots of companies. There are many good companies in the market. I talked about a few of them. Look at Reliance Jio, what they do. They are, again, they've created sustainable competitive advantage. Reliance Jio has close to 388 million mobile subscribers out of a total number of about 900 million. So they are a great case study also to study. So most welcome. It's really great to look at your comments. In order for a company to achieve sustainable competitive advantage, what should it do? This session is too short for me to explain that. So I teach a subject called strategic management, in which competitive advantage is the main topic, and it takes 30 hours for me to teach it. So we'll have to think of a separate session to really answer that question. But there are lots of things which can be done. Okay, I'm happy you liked examples. Suggestion to young entrepreneurs. So the first suggestion I would make to young entrepreneurs is, when you're creating your product or service, figure out very carefully, based on market observations, what is the fundamental problem of a human being that you're solving. And will that human being pay you money for your solution? That would be my advice to young entrepreneurs. So observe the market, talk to people, make observations, collect primary data. It should be a fundamental problem that someone has. And only if you give a solution to that fundamental problem, will you become a successful entrepreneur. So that would be my advice to young entrepreneurs. Okay, I think it's about 6:30. Narendra, shall we close here?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great.
Yes, sir.
So everyone, thank you very much. It was nice talking to all of you, although it's a little bit impersonal because I can't see or hear you. I can only see the chat box, but I hope all of you enjoyed. And my best wishes to you. So God bless each and every one of you. Wish you all the very best in life and at work. Stay safe, stay well, stay healthy, stay happy, and do well in life. Thank you very much. Thank you, Narendra,
sir, for your valuable
organizing
insights
this.
and enlightening us with your valuable experience by taking out time from your busy schedule. We wish this legacy and our journey in making India proud continues. Thank you once again for nurturing us, and surely we'll implement this competitive advantage leadership qualities in our entrepreneurial journey.
So
Thank you, sir.
somebody is asking for feedback link. You can look me up on LinkedIn, and you're more than welcome to share your feedback by writing a few lines in their sections. So
We'll share you
LinkedIn,
the report, sir.
yeah, no problem, no problem. You can share my LinkedIn profile with them. So I'm signing off today. Wish you all the very best. Have a good evening. Bye bye.